Welcome to AU Core Technical Design Group. My name is Danielle Tavares-Rickson. I am the co-chair, or a co-chair, sorry, of the AU Core Technical Design Group, and I'm going to be chairing the meeting today. And we've got Olivia, who will be scribing for us. This is our first meeting after Connectathon, and it's always a little bit difficult having one a couple of days after the Connectathon, which was this week, and we're going to do a bit of reporting on that. But it was a really great event. So I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of country, and that we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we all gather today, and we pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and extend our respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. And we acknowledge the First Peoples as the first scientists, educators, and healers. The agenda today, we'll be going through the usual business that we always do. There have been minutes that have been sent round for approval. A little bit of an update on ballot, which is closing on Sunday. We'll do some of the Connectathon report back and some of the testing updates. We're still collating results on that, but we've got, I think, a good picture, or at least an indicative picture on where that's been. And we'll start talking about ballot reconciliation and what's up next. Is there anything else that people would like to add to the agenda today? Or any questions or anything that you've come in to get some feedback on? All right, let's go into the usual business. So first up is approval of minutes. I'll just go to those now. Okay, these were sent round for review. This is quite a while ago, so we're reaching back into people's dim memory here. But we do have on here a list of attendees. We have our minutes, which include the transcript, the chat log. We have our slides. We've got the recorded session on YouTube. And then we have the list of decisions we made. The last meeting was largely around preparation for the upcoming Connectathon and also walking through the ballot process and some of a ballot 101 perspective. And that was that was what we covered in our last meeting. Does anyone need any more time to review these minutes before we move to approve? All right, I'm not hearing anyone. So would anyone like to move to approve the minutes of our last meeting? I've got the list of attendees here for someone who attended.
Hello, Danielle. It's Christy.
Thanks, Christy. Would anyone like to second that motion?
I'll second that.
Thanks, Stephen. Are there any other questions or comments while I go to get the poll up? All right, I'm just going to launch that poll. So please vote affirmative, negative, or abstain for approval of minutes of the last call. And if you have, if you've dialed in rather than having access to the voting buttons, you can either, if you can still access the chat, put a +1 of affirmative, negative, or abstain. You can also say your name and what your vote is if you also don't have access to the chat. Okay, so there's 2 in the chat. I'm going to close this down in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I will end that poll. We have 5 affirmative, 0 negative, and we have 12 abstain. And the motion does carry. We will approve those minutes. Okay, I'll go back to, oops, went too far. Updates and news. So I know we've just had a connectathon, but one of the things that happens at the end of the year is there's actually two that are more closer together. So there will be one in December, that'll be in Melbourne. I don't have the exact dates, but it's the second week in December.
I
And
can
so the
tell you,
second week in,
Danielle,
sorry?
it's the
Yep.
9th and 10th.
Oh, good. It's
The
the
not,
9th and 10th. Okay,
yeah,
well, let's just pop that in the chat.
yeah,
So 9th to the 10th of December, Melbourne is the next Connectathon. Do you know
yeah. I
when the
think
tickets will be released?
I do not know that fact, but I expect a page will go up in the near future, actually, because I think we're trying to get that up as early as possible.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. So yeah, that will come out really soon. And I mean, we do tend to have one at about these dates every year.
Yeah. Cool.
Um, And then I think the last update really is that the ballot period closes this Sunday. So there's really only 3 days to go for those who are looking to vote in the ballot period. I haven't listed anything else there. Have I missed any of the updates and news, Brett, or anyone else on things that they'd like to provide an update on?
Pretty happy.
Mhm. All right, well, let's move on to our next agenda item then. This is ballot update. This is going to be a standing item until we clear ballot, which is AU Core R2 working standard is the primary purpose of this AU Core TDG main call. The TDG does have two projects it looks after. One is the AU Core Fire AG, one is the AU Patient Summary Fire AG. So occasionally we will get updates related to that. Just for interest purposes, I've also included that in this call. So um, this is slightly out of date because it's still in the ballot period. I'll just run through all of this. Um, so we've completed obviously the ballot sign up, which is forming that consensus body for ballot of HL7 AU members, and we're in this ballot period now. So there's only just a few more days to go, which is when the balloters make a determination on if they are happy to for AU Core R2 as proposed from this TDG to proceed to publication, which may include a number of suggested changes, or if they aren't happy for that to proceed, which would be a negative vote. Um, then we go through a period of ballot reconciliation, which is where all ballot feedback and also any technical corrections, aka defects, are looked at in this period of time. We're really aiming to complete all of that within 2 months. So that gives us enough time to then publish a good baseline to bring into the December Connectathon, which means that we can then actually really test that before we go to publication. Because we're going to publish by the end of January, and it's always a good idea that we have got good test coverage of the changes that have been made by this group. And that's that publication over there, which would be AU Core R2. But really, we're aiming to finish deciding what changes, if any, like what is the work in AU Core R2 by the end of October. At the moment, we have 60 voters registered. 10 are individual HL7 AU members, and I can see that I have not managed to add up to 60. I'll need to go adjust that. One of those is wrong. Um, and then there's maybe 50 that represent organizations. The current count as of this morning, and in fact, that's slightly wrong, is that 23 voters have voted affirmative. Most of those have also suggested a number of improvements that they would like to be looked at before we publish. Um, and there's only one negative at this period of time. 11 voters have voted abstain. And then we've still got what would be 25 who haven't yet cast their vote. That was about an hour ago. Richard,
Got
I
to
see your
find the
hands up.
unmute. What does the
Yeah.
14 mean after organisations?
Oh, sorry, that there are 14 organizations who have across them 50 different voters.
Okay, right. So, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's unique organization numbers, and then after the colon is unique voters. There's this link here, like all of this is available on the ballot page, and this is, I mean, we can go check this now because this is the real-time um, ballot tooling provided by HL7 International. And in fact, you can see now, actually, I was wrong. The number is now 24. So there are now 24 affirmative, one negative, 11 abstain. Um, and that's accessible by everyone. This isn't secret squirrel stuff. So you can, you know, come back and monitor that link if you want to know where everything is at. Ideally, of course, we would have as many votes, either in affirmative, negative, or abstain as possible. There's always a number of no votes, which is to say that people have not been able to get in and change their vote. That's the default. Um, and that's decreasing every day, and we'd want that to be the lowest percentage possible, but there's always reasons that someone hasn't been able to log in or whatever's happened to actually cast their vote. Before I move on from this slide of just the overall kind of stats, and I'll show this the next time too, because the next time we meet, the ballot period will have closed. So we'll have those final numbers on where has the voting pool landed on what we've put forward as AU Core R2. Are there any other questions about this information before I move on? All right, well, let me show you a few of the numbers. So um, as we move through, people are raising numbers. So at the moment, there are 6 issues raised, which is why there's a 6 plus, because there'll be more. There's currently 6 issues when I was updating this slide for this morning raised for consideration. I've got this here so we can go check in real time what they are. Those have not been triaged yet. Triage is where the AU Core TDG co-chairs go through and look at, are these actually really AU Core issues or AU base, and start to prepare these to come into the TDG for discussion. Reconciliation is where this group has actually made a determination, and then we'll start tracking those through. And then applied is the number of issues and percentage of those that have actually been changed and already applied to the specification as we progress. And obviously, by the time we finish our ballot wider period, so up to the December Connectathon, we'd like all of these to read as 100% as much as possible. But we'll track these as we go through. Um, uh, we'll have to see how many numbers there are. I know this closes on a weekend, and we often do get a lot of numbers of issues being raised on a weekend because that just suits people submitting issues. So if we went and had a look at them, and this isn't actually the ballot filter because actually, Brett, as the HL7 AU ballot manager, have you created a ballot filter yet
No,
for, sorry?
no, we'll get get it updated and get a ballot filter on.
Okay,
It's
no
not done.
worries.
Yeah, it's
When
not
you
done.
have, I'll update the slides and everything so that we can communicate what the discrete filter is for that.
Yeah, okay.
So at the moment, what I've just gone to is that you can see that these are AU core issues. So we've got a number that have been raised. Some have been raised by me in support of patient summary. We've got 2 issues here. They haven't been voted on yet. But there are 2 issues raised by Graham, which came out of the recent Connectathon. We've then got some from the agency from David McKillop, which is a technical correction, which doesn't need to be voted on. Technical corrections just get fixed. You don't need to vote on them. And then we've got some also from Andy that we'll want to consider. So that's kind of the pool of potential issues at the moment, but I think we can expect to see that expand And the next time we meet, we'll have a complete pool of issues to consider and an initial set to actually start to vote on. If we were to go to, and there is a standing ballot area, so I've now gone to Confluence, and this is in the overall Confluence area, there is this ballot reconciliation area. And if we go to AU Core, oh, I see we've got a short list up here, or a quick links list. If we go to AU Core R2, you can see here that these same images are kept relatively up to date. And whenever we have votes upcoming, this page will be kept here. So I would suggest that you watch this page. We don't have any issues to vote on today, but if we were to look at AU Base, for example, that meets next week, and look at their latest one, you can see in upcoming votes, they've already got a number of different items that will be voted on in the next call. So this is the kind of thing that will be tracked on this page. Can someone pop a link into the AU Core page for folks so that they can go watch that and keep a track of and get, you know, the updates on when the votes are going to be? The other notification, because we don't want people to miss out, is that also on Zulip, you can see I was just talking about AU Base. So there is a Zulip topic for all our specs, and upcoming meeting agendas with ballot items will also be posted on Zulip, so that not just, you know, the people who are regularly coming, but others, if they're interested in the items, are able to see that these are the issues that will be voted on and what the connection details are for the meeting. All right, so that's AU Core. And just for contrast, I'm going to show you AU Patient Summary. So AU Patient Summary, same rough-ish timeframes as in ballot reconciliation wants to end at the same time. But because this is ballot for comment, there's going to be a working standard ballot later. This kind of snapshot should really end at the latest in November. It only has 58 registered voters, which is 2 less than Core. And here's its current numbers, where 18 are affirmative, 0 negative, 11 abstain, and no votes are still sitting at 29%. Oh, sorry, 29 votes. In terms of numbers, there are 17 plus JIRA issues relating to patient summary. That's great, and we want a lot more for patient summary project. This is early in the life cycle, and the ballot for comment is the point of eliciting a whole wide-ranging set of feedback in enough time that we can make some significant changes before it goes out for the ballot for working standard. So that number is tracking up, and I'd like to see that get a lot higher before the ballot period closes. So I guess that's a challenge to people with only 3 days to go. Before I move off these stats, are there any questions, I guess, around what I've just displayed, or anything sort of similar that you have a query on? All right. I'm also going to I see some names in the participation list, and I'm noting you guys are no votes yet. Don't forget to actually vote. Voting closes on Sunday, so you do need, so log in, please cast your vote for the different ballots. All right, we're going to do Connectathon report back. I might hand over to you, Brett, in the middle for this. I'll just open that one if that's okay with you.
Shocking.
Awesome. So the recent Connectathon was this week, Monday, Tuesday, in the Telstra Health Building. Telstra was really kind enough to provide that for the Connectathon usage this year, and they'd done that last year, and I thought that worked out really, really well. And there are great sponsors on Inner Systems, Telstra, of course, for the building, and also Sparked. And it was just a really, really good event. It was incredibly well attended. Uh, from an AU Core perspective, there were a few track goals on what we were trying to achieve. Obviously, we wanted to test out the AU Core R2 snapshot that we'd put out for ballot and get a sense of some confidence in that testing. In particular, really, we were also interested in AU Core Healthcare Service, which is a new resource submitted from the agency in support of Health Connect, which hasn't made the AFMM2 numbers. And there was also an intent to do a AU Core 101 and really support first time kind of HL7 AU Connectathon attendees, get people connected and discussing, and also talk about maybe the future of AU Core and how does it relate to a number of downstream specifications. Um, and here's some of the activities that happened, and I think I'll hand over to you, Brett, to talk through what actually
Sure.
happened.
Yeah, cool. So the intro session was good fun. We kind of we're trying to take the temperature of finding out where people were at and what they needed to know. I think we took people back to the spec to show where it was and what it was about. But some of the fun involved there was Michael Lawley walked through setting up a fire server to play with. So if you didn't have anything to play with, setting one up from scratch and being able to load AU Base and AU Core to be able to do some of the AU Core work. So that was, I think, well received. I think a couple of people from the event actually went on to set up their own Meld fire server, which is a good test bed if you want to kind of look at that. I'm hoping to get the slides from Michael to have that stuff up as well with the event. That's probably enough about that. But I think it did highlight there's still a lot of people coming on board. And I think AU Core is turning more and more into a place where people can get introduced to standards and kind of standards use in Australia. And it's a good place to get started if you are kind of new to the concepts there.
I mean, I was really excited to see a number of people who hadn't been to a Connectathon before or really participated in the AU space. And also to see Ian from ACT Health, who was there to
Yeah.
really understand where everyone was at and how that would be working. We had a whole number of like MARTA people there, and there was a whole bunch of different participants. I think, yeah, we probably do have slides on that. But I thought that it was really good that we had a whole bunch of that kind of new sort of integration and exposure, and a whole bunch of people who were actually going, right, well, I'm going to take this opportunity to, yeah, follow along with Michael Lawley and just stand up a fire service so I can start to explore how the specifications actually worked. That includes core, but it also was a few others. So that was great. And I think we should continue that, to be honest.
Yeah, I think just looking at what kind of went on at the event, we like the actual participation numbers in the AU Core track were kind of less than you may expect. And that was mainly, there was actually a number of systems available that have implemented AU Core, but they were off doing patient summary and new things and kind of where the change is happening. But so there were at least 4 or 5 systems actually with AU Core implemented and available at the event. So some of the people were connecting to those. But the people from those organizations were off doing AU Core and Smart Launch and other things. So I think it kind of shows that AU Core is part of the furniture almost. So there's certainly a cohort of implementers and stuff happening. So I think more and more it's kind of looking AU Core as a good intro place to come in, and also we want to bring new systems through as well into AU Core. So I think it's going to turn more into a onboarding, getting up to capability kind of track, because the kind of change rate has gone down on the spec anyway, as we know with R2. Cool. Oh, these are the people. So yeah, so these were a couple of the participants who were kind of doing AU Core mostly at the event. So yeah, Dispense Works, who are do kind of dispensing and medication related stuff. Yeah, they were looking at patient medication statement, they were thinking about e-prescribing and other business, but AU Core was kind of a good place to start. They're one of the groups that set up a MELD server and we're trying things out. And we had MedTech who are coming from New Zealand. They've already got existing Fire interfaces. They've implemented broad access across New Zealand with their system, and looking to have AE Core capability and support as well. So they're kind of coming from an interesting place. They have Fire IGs, they have some implementation, and they're trying to kind of reconcile what AE Core is to the things they have. They also pointed out a whole bunch of things that AE Core doesn't have that they have in their spec. And so, there was some suggestion there that they might think about forming that into a coherent ask of the TDG. Yeah, so I think, yeah, hopefully they got a lot out of the event. I think Dispense Works said they were going to be a bit more serious and bring more things implemented next time. And MedTech, I think it's an ongoing exercise, and they're kind of getting up to speed and learning things. Oh, smart health checks. So this is another group that we're using AU Core to do pre-population. So one of the important things with forms and other smart apps is to be able to get the data you need. So AU Core is kind of the tool for that. So again, we had users in the other tracks that were using AU Core. And again, I think that kind of indicates that people are expecting and relying on AU Core to do their business. So that's probably a really good sign. And that was good. Oh, and we'll talk about one of the breakouts. So the Fire IG authoring breakout was very well attended also. Graham Grieve attended as well, who's the IG publisher, kind of key implementer from HL7. So we talked a bit about just needs and wants around IG authoring, the potential to kind of keep in contact and make this a regular thing. So I think people were very keen on having a regular breakout at each Connectathon for anyone doing IG authoring to get together. We had like HL7 Australia, Spark authors there. We had agency authors there for their specs. We had some people who were implementing commercial product IGs as well. Graham came along and told us a bit about new things that were coming into the IG publishing realm, which was very interesting. So there's been a whole set of work around multilingual support, which is probably not super hot in Australia, but it's something that is there that may come up. So certainly IGs can now support multiple languages. And the other thing he talked about was testing artifacts in IGs. And so this is not just kind of examples that are verified to include in an IG, but other examples and tests that are held in the package that gets published and are not actually published to the IG content, but are held inside and can be used to test the IG's operation. So that includes not just passing tests, but failing tests, and you can do kind of specific checks in there as well. So it's being able to kind of flesh out a complete testing framework as part of the IG deliverable, and also include that in the package that gets delivered, so people can have that as a reference to kind of have that material available to them on the technical side if they want to do their own kind of testing kind of approaches and see how that works. Yeah, what else we got? Oh yeah, there was things like there was some stuff that's kind of maybe from a CDI perspective is interesting, where about creating examples from spreadsheets and mappings. So it's kind of, how do you create a set of examples more easily or be able to have it populated by clinicians? I think the test data project that's gone on InnoSystem Australia kind of approaches some of that as well. But there's a few more tools in the IG bag to help do that with some kind of templated outputs and a whole bunch of things that IG Publisher can now do. Some of that's still in progress, I think. So kind of keep looking for that and see how we can use it going forward. Yeah, so it's quite a lot of packed information in that session. But I think the main thing too is there's a link there of people if they're interested in kind of keeping in contact, and we're kind of just working through contact on that channel to try and work out if we're going to do things in between events. And but it was a good session to get everyone together in that space.
All right, thanks, Brett. Any
Yeah, thanks.
questions on that one? All right. This is a bit of a work in progress slide, but we had a question in the chat of how much was technical connecting. Is this trying to start to put it together? We're still building out a kind of a picture on the Spark testing community, which is like people who are testing across core, across patient summary, across e-requesting, and there are more coming. But this is trying to sort of put together which systems are talking to who with like real connections over those 2 days. We're missing more arrows, and there are a couple more systems that need to get added into here. But it was such a great event. And it was such amounts of both connecting and incredibly interesting breakouts around like AI and whether it was patient summary or how do I build IGs or all those sorts of different things around authorization that were going on that I think, yeah, no, it was just a really, really great connectathon. And I hope we managed to hit at least those levels in the December connectathon. If this is like the level we can keep going, that would be amazing. Yeah, it is kind of. Richard, like responding to that, where Epic is the most connected node, where it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 connections into it.
There could be a price for that.
Yeah, I mean the Spark D
Yeah.
requesting test server that's on there does. We haven't shown the also the public test servers for core and patient summary, which were also really well connected, aren't on the diagrams yet. What's also not shown is Inferno, and I think we probably won't add Inferno because that's more of a testing tool rather than taking the place of a actor. I agree, Yoni. Where is Oracle?
Where is Oracle?
Great question. I would love to have them. And so I think, no, you can just start to see that there has been just an amazing amount of work done by the community coming in and coming across, and really starting to build out an ecosystem that talks to each other. It's pretty fantastic. I kind of want to be able to have this diagram and sort of show that in our TDGs after every event about how many people we have now, what are they all doing, and how does it work?
Yeah, I think yeah, our aim is obviously to have more more participants with more systems, and but I think I love this picture because it's showing like, yeah, hey, this is what a healthcare system's like. There's a lot of things connecting to all the things. So yeah, amazing, good job. I haven't seen this one yet.
Yeah, we're still gonna be editing the diagram. There's still more stuff to go, but I wanted to share it because I think it's just already really indicative of the pretty fantastic work that has been going on in community. All right. I'm gonna move on then. So, a bit more on the updates and results. These are also a work in progress. We had 3 totally new participants that added into AU Core. So I'll just go, the majority of what you see up above, although even though it's patient summary, that's also building on top of AU Core. For our test results, we had really 2 kinds of results, I think. We had totally new participants that we haven't captured any fire results from before. That included Epic. And we're also expecting results from Marta and MedTech, who we're connecting on the day, and we're talking with them on how can we get their test results and add it to this. So we've added the EPIC results. I've got the summary here, the full like spreadsheet of which elements are available and how is it all working, will be up later. And I'll do a post on Zulip and in the typical, I think, fortnightly email I send out about minutes plus next meeting, to let you know those are there if you want to go look at them. But we're still gathering them. For now, what we can see is we've had some real jump in coverage. Some of that has come from the new participants, but a lot of this has actually come from existing test participants who have really expanded the coverage of the resources they've been implementing. Some of that is because they've gone from AU Core into patient summary, or from AU Core into e-requesting, or kind of also going across both e-requesting and AU Core, which means that they're looking at implementing additional resources. And so we've seen a jump of like 4 participants into allergy intolerance. We've got 22 now. We've got 23 in condition, which I think was sitting at maybe 18, 19 before. There's more in encounter. There's more in immunization. I'm just going to do a call out though to, actually, is Tim on the line? I'll have to talk to Tim. Tim has an action about increasing the testing coverage for healthcare service. And sadly, we've still only got 2 test participants. So I think we're going to really need to look at that one. And one of them isn't the agency. I think we've got Cyro and we've got HealthLink who have tested healthcare service. And so I think we need to put a call out to systems who have implemented or are looking to implement a healthcare service on this one. We got increases in location and medication request and medication statement. Nothing extra in organization, but we've got a jump up to 28 per patient from what was 25. Also practitioner role. That's mostly our newer participants, because the majority of people who come and test and have a fire related product do, you know, patient, organization, practitioner role. Increases in procedure, also related person, which was interesting. And out of all the observations, it was body temperature that there's 1 extra system testing, which was interesting. I don't know why that one in particular, but that had 1 extra system has shown results of testing that. And that's what we've got so far out of the Connectathon, but we don't have the MARTA and the MedTech yet. So I'll report back to you guys when we've got, I guess, the complete update on what those shifts of system testing are. It doesn't change this kind of perspective where we've got some minimum kind of expectations on saying, have we met a AFMM2, an Australian Fire maturity model level 2 yet, which we've got for everything but healthcare service, and we didn't see a shift or an increase, I guess, in systems testing healthcare service at the last event. So that still stays there. I think we have to target that for the December Connectathon to get evidence on that one. I think that's all I've got so far, because we are, you know, only halfway through capturing all those test results from the event earlier this week. Does anyone have any questions around what I was just running you through? Or anything else that you'd like to know? And in response to the question in the chat, we'll try to get the testing highlights image. I think we'll try to actually have it publicly available. I think we've got a couple of organizations that I will need to get approval to use their icon for in that. But we can always just sub that in with the organization name instead of the icon. And then, yes, absolutely happy for people to use that. It's all publicly available information. So I can send out an email when that's done. It should be, I think we're really targeting the end of this week, but it might be next week, depending on when people can come back to us about approval of use of their logo. All right. So that's largely the report back from the event and the testing results. And I wanted to talk about what comes next. Before I go into that, is there anything else that people wanted to discuss in this call? All right, not hearing anything, I'm going to go into it. I will just really quickly cover off the rough next agenda. So in our next call, it's the final update really on the ballot for working standard status will have closed then, so we know what all the voting is at, where people, what all that comes through as. So I'll report back on that. I think we'll also get, what's not here is those finalized kind of test coverage results, so we'll know where everything is at. And then we're going to do ballot reconciliation. The advance notice of which JIRA issues we're going to be voting on will come out via the email. It should be early next week. And the email is the AU Core TDG minutes plus like next meeting email. That one will announce which JIRA items we're going to be discussing. There will also be the post in Zulip under the AU Core topic that'll say, hey, in our next call, we're going to vote on these items. So that's how we will know which particular requested changes we're going to be discussing and voting on in our next call, and we'll just go forwards that way. That's the intention for our next meeting. Does anyone have any other agenda items that they'd like to put onto that meeting? All right. Then what I'm going to raise is that there's a face-to-face coming. So there aren't any official comms out on this yet. They should come out next week. This is part of the, I think we tend to do a quarterly, although it's ended up being about 3 a year, where we meet for a CDG TDG days. The next one is coming up in November in Canberra, and it's on the 13th. And what I wanted to raise and discuss with this group is that while this is primarily looking to be an AU patient summary agenda, and patient summary has a couple of ongoing serious topics that are being worked through a series of community forums. And they include the considerations when consuming IPS documents in the Australian healthcare context. There's also, I guess, hot topics, which ends up really being exchange options and other items around that. And those will be on the upcoming agenda for the November face-to-face. But at this point, I wanted to raise with this group if there is interest in starting to discuss AU Core R3 scoping. The reason I'm raising that is because we are intending to finish ballot reconciliation, as in to finish deciding all our changes for R2 by the end of October. And so we could discuss what new items and undertake, I think this would be a good opportunity to try the approach that was done in the CDG in, what was it? It was the last one that was in Sydney. Was that July, folks? Was that July? I think it was. Is anyone on the line? Did you go to the CDG in July that was in Sydney?
I did.
Mm-hmm.
I did too.
And did you see the approach around the kind of expression of interest and allowing the community to essentially pitch what would be the preferred items of work into the next release of AU CDI?
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
great.
Because I heard also a lot of great feedback from that, and that really resonated with the community to be allowed to have a forum to come together and pitch a series of ideas on what should be worked on and how it could work. And I think that's something that we should consider adopting for AU Core. I think our first opportunity to do that is the November face-to-face in Canberra. And so I wanted to ask this group your thoughts on taking that approach. Ruben.
Um, yeah, look, I think it would be a good idea if it's an official TDG meeting and if people are able to participate remotely. I'm just mindful that I don't want people that aren't able to attend in person for financial or other reasons to be excluded from a discussion like that.
I've got to say, um, I'm less concerned about the remoteness because I think in a scoping session where it's looking at what are your ideas and what would you like to work on? I've got to say, I think in a technical design sense. Oh, and sorry, your first part, it would be an official TDG meeting. Those days are. Um, I We've never seen substantial difference in terms of the makeup of approval. And I've not seen it be a concern in the community where if a well-formed proposal comes in that says, this is really important for us to be included, we will help do the work. I've never seen that be voted against, ever. So I'm not actually sure that there's really a governance concern with having that be a face-to-face only. Obviously, when the work progresses, that will go through a number of fortnightly calls, it'll go through connectathons, it'll go through testing events. There'll be a whole number of things that look at how that content progresses. But in terms of the forum to put forwards an opportunity, yeah,
Will there
I
be
guess I'm saying I
additional?
wouldn't be worried. Yeah.
Look, I'm not, and I really don't mind. I think it's more ideal to have those kinds of discussions face to face. I guess my point is, if this would be okay if there are also going to be conference call opportunities for discussing scoping.
That's a good point. And I didn't qualify. This wouldn't be the only point. This would be, I think, one opportunity. I don't think scoping starts and ends with a single session in a face-to-face meeting. I think this would be our first opportunity to allow people to put things forward. I think we would then have a number of other events, both hybrid and totally online, that we would encourage people to also submit needs. Marvin?
I think from my perspective, I think that when you have the face-to-face, I think we tend to get a lot more participation from people. And this is just something I've observed, is that when you're at a table with peers, you tend to speak up a lot more. You've got more time because it's a day dedicated to it than if we do it on calls. I think we have a lot less feedback on the calls from the broader group. We have the same people who speak all the time on the calls, but when you have the in person, I think a lot more people have their voice heard. Just an observation.
Yoni?
Look, I have to say, unfortunately, I won't be able to attend on this November 13th, but I agree. I think some of those discussions that you just discussed, ideas-wise, are best discussed in person than on Zoom calls. You guys go ahead. I'm sure it will be something great that comes out of it.
Thanks, Yoni. Did anyone else want to either have a question or make a comment or a suggestion for how that might work? So I think overall, can I maybe get people's hands up who would be noting that we've covered off this wouldn't be the only opportunity. It's as put in the chat, this would be an EOI opportunity. It's not just closing off the scope. It would be giving people the opportunity to pitch a scope and talk about things face to face. Is there interest in having a session on that for AU Core R3 scope EOI in the November face-to-face? If you could put your hand up if you think that would be of interest. And hand up in Zoom, sorry, using the... David, you would like to present?
No, wrong button.
Okay. Okay, so 4 people have their hand up. 5. So 5 people have said that that would be of interest. Is there anyone else who thinks that that would also be useful?
Sorry, my button didn't work. I am supportive and I'm interested.
Okay. All right, so we've got maybe 8 people if I take some of the comments in the chat and so forth. Of 32 participants on the call, I wonder if that's too low to actually attempt it.
Certainly sounds like it.
Mm. So I guess a related consideration, Danielle, is do you think that the AUCDI scope for their R3 will be locked down by that meeting? Because something else we could
No.
discuss is, oh, it won't be. Okay.
No, it won't be. Well, okay. So, we're going to very shortly get the future AUCDI scope for R3. There are a number of items that were originally raised on AU Core in order to support smart forms and some of the child health that have been deferred in AU Core R2. Also because there was no AUCDI model behind it, that are being picked up in the upcoming AUCDI work. So we know what the next, or we will shortly have the information, I believe, on what the next set of AUCDI priorities are. And part of what we need to undertake in AU Core is, I mean, it's a pretty broad range. I've had a lot of people come to me over the last 12 months who variously talked about, and I mean, you're one of them, Ruben, about things like maybe we could get diagnostic reporting going. Why can't we have diagnostic report? I've actually heard that from quite a few people recently. There's things around why can't we get some more vital signs and observations around head circumference. There's other things around maybe we should actually be working on the record and update and the write back. And so I think there's this really broad range of topics, some of which are, I think, really best able to be presented in person so that we get a better picture of what the ask is and why that is coming through instead of maybe a cold vote where we put up a poll. I think this is going to be a longer discussion, and AU Core R3 scoping will actually probably go from end of sort of November right through to maybe March, May next year, over a series of meetings. I don't know. Did I just confuse you, Ruben?
Oh, no, that wasn't confusing at all. And yeah, I think those are areas that I think we should look at. And yeah, diagnostic report in particular, I can just with the share by default agenda and for other reasons, that's something I would like us to see do a bit more work on.
So I think one of the things I've seen that, which is why I'm suggesting this, and I'm totally okay. If this isn't resonating with people, we shouldn't do it. One of the reasons that I've been suggesting this internally, and I'm now exposing this externally, is to give the forum for people who have these great ideas to convince the rest of the community. A lot of the scoping so far in the technical space hasn't involved a lot of opportunity on a presentation and justification forum. It's been sort of these number of votes or polls of, you indicate, shall we work on this? But not really given a forum for people to essentially pitch. And I thought what I understood happened in the last kind of meeting on the CDG, I thought was a pretty good approach to addressing some of the gaps I've seen in providing that community aspect to drive something forwards. Marvin?
Just to, I guess, to clarify the approach, do the changes that we make in the TDG have to first pass through, I guess, the CDG in order to kind of come onto our radar?
There's a qualification. So if there is a split between, and I'm just going to do a gross categorization here: clinical concepts, administrative concepts, technical concepts. So AU CDI doesn't intend to deal with things like authorization, security, etc. That's totally in our wheelhouse. They're in no way ever going to be interested in it. Administrative concepts are almost solely ours as well. Things around how do we do patient matching, addresses, all that sort of thing stay with us, billing, that sort of stuff. So that will never go through AU CDI. The crossover is clinical. There is a blurred line between that. Where the CDG has a defined, already present clinical model, we can pick that up and work with that. They have published the AUCDI with indicators of which clinical data groups, let's say, and data elements are relevant to particular use cases, but those are still there. So we can decide to, for practical reasons or standards architecture reasons, incorporate an AU Core, a model that has been flagged by AUCDI to be, I don't know, chronic disease. They've already got it defined. If we want to work on something that is clinical, that isn't yet in the CDG, we absolutely should be flagging that back to the CDG to flag the work that we want to undertake and why. And then that could either be brought into AUCDI and worked on in parallel, or there could be some way in which the CDG oversees that or provides clinical advice based on the questions. But yeah, there really does have to be a relationship between what we're doing and the clinical design group modeling.
So for diagnostic reports, for example, that's something that would need to go through CDG or get them to have oversight of what we're doing.
I think we would flag that with them. If the pitch came that we should do this, we would then want to flag that back with the CDG to say, and they could say, look, based on what your profile is suggesting, we don't think this is of concern that we need to be involved. Or they could say, look, we actually really want to be involved, and here's how, and we would work out some kind of way of doing that, which could even result in a number of joint meetings in order to ensure that what we're undertaking has the appropriate CDG guidance. But I mean, that doesn't mean they're not off the table for us. It just means that we would then ensure that we put in place the right relationship back into the CDG work.
Okay. Because I suspect there is, for example, the e-resulting mechanism is something that I guess a number of people are considering and looking at. And I guess we probably need to have, I don't know, a plan of action for how we do that, so we don't kind of head off down a different path or whatever.
Well, part of that would be, and I mean, I guess we're kind of taking that, if we take the diagnostic reports, that's already kind of seeing the, like, it depends on who's putting it forwards. What group have they formed? Like which organization or group of organizations say, we think it's really important that AU Core R3 provides an AU Core diagnostic report profile. This is why it's really important. Here is the work we already have available. Here are the people who are already invested in this and would come to the meetings. And some of those might include their clinical reference specialists for their organizations. So, I mean, it does depend on what that actual proposal is.
Okay, cool.
So I guess I'm still on the fence of, is this something that is, and the reason I'm asking now is very shortly because we are, as we've noted, the comms for this haven't officially come out. And one of the reasons for that is trying to shape out the appropriate agenda and give people enough time to come to that. And I guess my question to this group is, do we want to provide a opportunity in the upcoming November to start this conversation on AU Core R3 and offer the opportunity for organizations to put forward, or individuals, what they think would be a really good idea and why?
Well, I think I mean, if we're having a face-to-face and we have a session which allows people to do that, I think that'd be okay. And as long as you're giving people prep time to plan something, I don't know, what would be the alternative? Just have it as a submission via Confluence or something, or Jira?
There's a couple of alternatives. The way we've done it in the past is how we did it originally for AU Core Scoping R2, where we held a workshop day in December, which was a half day again, and people filled out worksheets with ticks. The default baseline for a fire specification project is that a person says at a point in time in which I or any other chair says, would you like to talk about a topic? Someone else says yes, and they go, I think we should work on insert topic here. That will always remain open to people. The other way we typically do it is hold an online scoping meeting, which we would do for AU Core in probably early February anyway, to hold a final kind of scoping meeting and encourage the community to come along to that to identify the final kind of big items we might work on for the year. But that would be like a standard fortnightly call like this one, where it would just be an open call and we would ask people to turn up and go, what Jira items, what other things would you like to work through?
Well, I don't think we should take this off the table. It may be that we don't have sufficient groundswell of opinion right now. But I think that also is because it's just been brought up today and people don't even know if they're going to be able to attend. So I think let's leave it on the table and see where we land.
All right. I'll take that away and have a bit more of a conversation with a few people. If there's anyone on the line who posts this, has some thoughts around the inclusions that they think they would like to be worked on, the ask isn't that you have a final design. The ask is if there are things that you know that you are interested to be included in AU Core R3 and why, and that you would be a party to that. And we can put that together and send out some comms on that, because if we don't do it in the November workshop, I suppose our next opportunity is part of the December Connectathon to offer like a breakout session or something to do that there as well. And that might give people more lead-in time. All right, that was the final thing that I wanted to talk about today. Stephen, you've gone off mute. Okay.
Sorry, Daniel, are you referring to me?
Yes, you just
Oh.
went off mute.
Oh yeah, I just
went
went off mute. So yeah, I am just thinking that if there are profiles that are not already in AU base, and I know that from a process perspective, you are getting through to AU base first, but is there any sort of a fast tracking mechanisms to get into the AU core?
Yes, I think there is. I think a joint development where it is in both, where it is worked on in both base and core at the same time, would be the fast track.
Okay, that would be wonderful, because there are a couple of fire resources which I would benefit from having in AU base and fast track to AU core. And you know that I've submitted some draft suggestions about 3 AU base profiles, the care plan, care team, and also goal profiles for AU base. So I was just thinking that it will be useful if we can fast track it into the AU core as well, because AU core is more of a supporting implementation. And so if a mechanism of such exists, that would be something useful to consider.
I think they would be good candidates for AU Core R3 and possibly the related ones, because I know
Okay.
AU CDI has
That'll be-
goal as well, which is quite closely related to that.
All right, I'll take it offline to have more sort of exploration. Thank you.
Brett?
I was just going to ask, because the CDG, the chronic disease management area stuff, will that pick up some of that anyway?
Are you
'Cause that
referring
will-
that to Stephen?
Oh no, I'm just wondering, because that will come through as well, right, as materials,
Yeah, it all depends.
because there's specific meetings.
In my
Yeah.
opinion, it all depends on sort of what bandwidth does the CDG has, and
Yep.
in terms of, and also in terms of their priorities timeline as well.
Yep.
While we would like to have some level of endorsement from the CDG, but I think the care plan, care team, and goal resource at the international level has been relatively stable, and I think we can, if possible, work in parallel.
Cool.
And that would exactly be the kind of, thing that might be brought up. Whether we do that at November, we do it at December, or we do that through a virtual call would be the kind of scoping that we would undertake for AU Core R3.
Right. Yeah, I think that was something useful to consider. Either November or December, or through some other mechanism. So we'll take it offline. I just want to explore as to whether or not there is any support or any sort of possibility of that kind of approach. If there is, then that's good. If there isn't, then sort of I don't even have to think about it.
No, I think there is. Okay. Are there any other comments anyone would like to make, or any other questions before we close the meeting?
Just one. Do we have a list of items which were deferred during previous meetings and considerations that we could have a look at again?
Do. There is under and I can try to find it for. So under our AU Core space, while we have this overall group about parking lots in the TDG, there's an AU Core backlog area. This page, and I'll just drop that in the chat.
Thank you.
There we go. That page in the chat has a list of things that are already marked as deferred. So these have been voted on by this group, and there are 25 as things that are of potential relevance, but are for some future release, which could indeed be R3. And there's also then a list of items that are open. And then we have a further list of resource profiles that someone at some point has said, I think we want one of these in AU Core. They haven't always raised a JIRA item that we've officially voted on. A lot of these came out of the very original kind of 6 months of scoping of the AU Core project. So you can already see we've got like care plan and care team here, recognized items that we even had a very early draft of like 18 months to 2 years ago on that haven't made it into an active release yet. So there's quite a few that at least one person, one organization has raised as being relevant to AU Core. All of those are on that page. And I think are very likely candidates to end up in AU Core at some point. All right.
Thank you. That's great. We've got that summarized so neatly. I agree with Stephen's calls for care plan work, but I was also thinking of medication dispense and administration. I know we discussed those, and it's good to see them on that list.
Yeah, they're also in the JIRA as well, actually, those two.
Yeah, saw that. Okay.
No worries. Okay. Then I'll close the meeting a little bit early. And thank you all for your time. We will be voting on ballot items in our next meeting, and I'll also get back to you on where we are in terms of putting forward an EOI for AU Core R3 scoping items. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Danielle.
Thank you.
Thanks, Danielle. Thanks,
Thanks.
everyone.
Thanks. See ya.